Today, we dive into a story of unexpected tension, unspoken emotions, and a choice that changed everything. It all started with something so small, so seemingly insignificant, that no one could have predicted how it would unravel everything. I was folding clothes in the living room when Jake called out from the hallway. "Lorraine, can you help me with this?" I turned to see him at the top of the stairs, struggling with his belt buckle. He wore loose khaki shorts that sat low on his hips, and the leather strap of his belt was twisted awkwardly. "It's stuck or something," he said, his voice carrying a hint of frustration. I set the towels aside and walked toward him, nodding. "Sure." As I reached for the belt, trying to free the strap from the buckle, I could hear his breathing close, too close. I mumbled an apology under my breath as the leather resisted, and then, suddenly, it gave way. Before either of us could react, his shorts slipped down to his ankles. For a moment, time froze. My gaze dropped involuntarily before I snapped it away. But the surge of energy in that split second, it was undeniable. Jake stood motionless, his hands hovering awkwardly at his waist, his face flushed. "Uh, sorry," he stammered, quickly pulling his shorts back up. I stepped back, my cheeks burning, my heart pounding. It's, it's okay." Neither of us spoke after that. He turned and walked away, leaving me standing there with a feeling I couldn't quite explain. We never mentioned it again, but from that day forward, something between us had shifted. My marriage to Alan wasn't a fairy tale romance, but it wasn't terrible either. It was stable, predictable, and comfortable. Maybe too comfortable. We had married later in life. I was 44. He was 50. We had both experienced failed first marriages and had learned to settle into a peaceful rhythm. Alan had his habits: Saturday golf, monthly fishing trips, and endless business dinners that kept him out late. I had learned to fill the silence with charity work, gardening, and keeping the house in order. Then Jake moved in. Alan's son from his first marriage had always been polite but distant. Our interactions had been limited to awkward holiday visits when he was still in college. But the man who arrived at our doorstep 6 years later was not the same shy, reserved boy I remembered. Jake had just graduated with a fine arts degree, something Alan barely concealed his disappointment about. With no clear career path, Alan offered him a place to stay until he could figure things out. I hadn't been consulted, but I hadn't objected either. I didn't expect Jake's presence to change the entire atmosphere of the house. He wasn't just another person filling space. He was magnetic. His confidence, his humor, the easy way he moved through the house, it all made his presence impossible to ignore. And I noticed. It started with the little moments. One morning, I was trimming the bushes in the backyard when Jake appeared on the patio, barefoot, a cup of coffee in hand. "You're up early," I said, surprised. He shrugged. "Couldn't sleep. Besides, someone has to appreciate all the work you put into this place." I chuckled. "Don't let Alan hear you say that. He thinks the garden takes care of itself." Jake smirked, his eyes holding something unspoken. "Alan doesn't notice a lot of things." His words lingered. I chose not to ask what he meant, but from that moment I couldn't shake the feeling that he saw me. Over the following weeks, we fell into an easy rhythm. Jake would linger in the kitchen while I cooked, sharing stories from his college days. Some afternoons I found him sketching in the living room. One day curiosity got the best of me. "Do you mind if I see?" I nodded toward his sketch pad. He hesitated, then handed it to me. The pages were filled with breathtaking portraits, landscapes, abstract designs, each one pulsing with emotion and life. "These are incredible," I murmured, genuinely impressed. "You should show these to someone, a gallery, an art director. You have real talent." Jake's eyes met mine, searching. "You're the first person who's ever said that?" There was something in his voice, a weight I couldn't ignore, and suddenly I realized I wasn't ignoring it. Then came the belt incident, and everything changed. For days, the air between us was thick with something neither of us knew how to handle. I tried to avoid being alone with him, but the house was too quiet and our paths crossed too often. One evening, as I stood at the sink washing dishes, Jake walked into the kitchen. His hair was damp from a shower. His voice was soft when he spoke. "Lorraine, I need to apologize." I turned, my pulse quickening. It's okay. I don't think it is. I froze. The weight of his words pressed between us. Slowly, I faced him. My chest tightened with something dangerously close to anticipation. Jake, we can't. I know. He took a step closer. But I don't want you to think it didn't mean anything. His voice was steady, his eyes unwavering. And in that moment, something inside me broke. The days that followed were a blur of stolen glances, quiet confessions, moments that lingered just a second too long. Alan remained oblivious, lost in his own world. But Jake and I, we were circling something inevitable. Then one afternoon, as I folded laundry in the guest room, Jake appeared in the doorway. We need to talk. I nodded, closing the door behind him. I don't know how to act around you anymore, I admitted. My voice was unsteady. We have to move past this. You keep saying that, he said, stepping closer. But I don't think either of us believe it. His confession hit like a wave. For the first time, I admitted to myself, this wasn't just a fleeting moment, it was something more. Later that night, when Jake kissed me for the first time, there was no turning back. It wasn't planned, it wasn't rational, but it was real. And the moment it happened, I knew everything was about to change. What would you have done in my place? Drop a comment below and let's talk about it. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more thought-provoking content. Because sometimes the smallest moments change everything.